Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
It's a great privilege to be sitting with one of our most relentlessly inventive and groundbreaking filmmakers, Bob Zemeckis. Welcome to the Director's Chair.
Hey, thank you.
We had a conversation a couple months ago on the phone where we were building each other up into a fever pitch talking about technology and the state of the art and modern filmmaking. And I stopped as I said, you know what, I have a show called The Director's Chair where a director interviews another director about the craft. And people would love to hear this. Other filmmakers, film lovers, artists in general, because you're so enthusiastic and you're so inventive and you're such a craftsman. And here are some of the films that prove that. Romancing the Stone.
We're in a lot of trouble.
It's the best time I've ever had.
Back to the Future.
You built a time machine? Kind of a DeLorean?
No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
You wouldn't have any idea where the rabbit might be.
I didn't kill anybody! I swear! Behind you!
Forrest Gump.
My name's Forrest Gump. People call me Forrest Gump.
Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest. You never know what you're gonna get.
Contact.
So beautiful.
Cast Away.
Anybody! Forward! Captain forward!
The first motion capture film ever, The Polar Express.
Well, you coming?
Flight. And the upcoming The Walk. I want to talk about some of your early days. You didn't start having any connections in the industry at all.
Yeah, well, that's, well, look, I mean, my story is like an American dream story. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, a working poor family. I didn't know it, but now I know we were like working poor. We thought we were middle class, but we were poor.
How did the dream of filmmaking in particular as an artist come about?
Obviously, I loved the, World War II movies, horror movies, monster movies. I loved anything with special effects in it and action. And I just always wanted to know how they did that, how they did that, how they did that. And that was my initial, as a kid, interest in movies until I was like, I think I was a freshman in high school, and I saw Bonnie and Clyde. And I remember very profoundly, there's a scene where Gene Hackman's character gets shot in the head, and he's in this field and he's dying. And I remember being like overwhelmed with sadness and emotion. And that was the moment, the seminal moment in my life where I went, I gotta be a movie director. Right around the same time, I'm watching Johnny Carson. His guest that night is Jerry Lewis. In the 60s, he was like the Spielberg of the movie industry. He had like total autonomy over making his movies. So Johnny says, hey, Jerry, I hear you're teaching school at a university. He goes, yeah, I'm teaching at the USC Cinema School. And I went, cinema school? I thought, wow, there's a place where you can actually learn cinema? I said, I gotta go to this place. I got accepted into the USC Film School, and that was my connection to the movie business. I came out cold turkey. I had no relatives in the movie business. Nobody had a union card, nothing. And I just basically got into the industry through the film school. I don't think I could have done it any other way.
And how did you actually get into film classes? Were you making films?
So yes, so you had to submit work to the film school. And I had made these little films back in Chicago. And the film school, they saw potential in my work. They accepted me, but the university didn't think my grades were that good enough. So I had to basically talk my way into the university, but the film school, they accepted me right away. So all these very fortunate things happened in my life.
And then you made a student short film that won an Academy Award.
The first Student Academy Award, called Field of Honor, and it was a black comedy.
Nobody move! I'm taking this bus to Cuba!
Billy Friedkin gave me the award.
Oh.
Billy Friedkin and Walter Marish.
Wow. So then how did you get your first gig, which was I Want to Hold Your Hand? So you got a particular budget to I Want to Hold Your Hand, and you did some tricks in there that you ended up making sort of like a hallmark of your films, which was taking footage, archival footage, or doubles to make it look like the girls were actually with the Beatles.
We were able to actually get the rights to the Ed Sullivan Show. This was right at the moment when they figured out how to take the shutter line out of video playback television, right? So we had these processors that were able to give us these clean images. And I got these guys who were these Beatle doubles. I would do these shots where, you know, I would sync them up with video footage and sort of create the illusion that the Beatles were actually there. Came out and it was a financial disaster. And the sad lesson that I learned on that first movie is we had these previews that went through the roof, but it never connected. And I heard this term for the first time. Oh, when the movie didn't perform, one of the marketing guys said, oh, it's a turntable hit. And I said, turntable hit? Yeah, it's like a song that people like to hear on the radio, but they don't buy. And I realized at that moment, oh, this business there's two different parts. You can't just make the movie and think that that's the end of your job. You have to do this other thing, which is you have to do this marketing.
How did that lead to one of my favorite movies, Used Cars?
Yeah.
I love Used Cars. Every time I see you, I say, I love Used Cars. Not to discount your other filmography. That's just, I always think that may be forgotten even by yourself.
No, Used Cars was Used Cars was like, how edgy can we be?
Let's take a look under the hood, shall we?
I remember the genesis of the movie was we have to make it like a Frank Capra movie, but everybody's lying, you know. We want to love everyone because they're such great liars. That was sort of like what we were doing with that movie. No one told the truth.
I want to bring up some of your shots just because there's no making ofs back then, so I can't watch. So I have to just ask you, like the camera shot coming down all the way down to the odometer.
I wanted, to see that big Edsel up on the thing. I wanted to show you where this was, and then see the kind of ugly little car, dealership, and that you were out in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. And you see this guy underneath the car, like he's, was he working on the car? The joke is he's turning back the odometer. So it's like, well, it'd just be more elegant if it was all done in one shot.
Yeah. And then Used Cars didn't do well at the box office.
And Used Cars didn't do well at the box office, no.
When the first one didn't perform, what did it cause some nervousness?
In myself? Oh, yeah, no, I take this very seriously. Yeah, no, it's like I thought, oh man, yeah. Here's what they said about me in Hollywood. They'd say, oh no, he's a good filmmaker, he's unlucky. They would actually say shit like that, he's unlucky.
These kind of things come up a lot in these talks with the directors. You follow and you see where there's a perceived failure, and it's a stepping stone to something that just sends them on their way. So that people who watch this don't fear perceived mistakes or failure. I mean, it's not failure. Both those movies were terrific movies. They just didn't perform at the box office, which is your barometer for any success in Hollywood. But people noticed, and Michael Douglas was one of those that noticed.
You kind of like saw the nasty streak in Used Cars. That
swagger.
The swagger, yeah, that's that. Yeah,
it really had a swagger.
He kept saying the word energy. I like the energy that he's got in that movie. He came to my defense endlessly on Romancing the Stone.
What'd you do? Wake up this morning and say, today, I'm gonna ruin a man's life.
The alchemy worked really well on Romancing the Stone. Michael was he had this idea for the movie that he wanted to really play this character. He loved Diane Thomas, who had a real flair for what she was writing, but the screenplay structurally was like kind of a mess. And I secretly knew how to fix everything. Right. So it was a great collaboration because Michael wanted what I had and I knew how to fix this piece of material. And so it all kind of came together.
So would you actually write and rewrite stuff?
No, I would sit with I would sit with Diane Thomas and
she worked with
and just the way Alfred Hitchcock and Ernest Lehman would sit together, would talk it through.
How was that shoot? Was that a tough shoot? Was it looked amazing.
Oh, it was that. I to this day I think it was the toughest movie I ever made. I said to my agent, I said, if a screenplay ever comes across your desk ever again, and the first slug line on page 1 says, exterior jungle rain, It's a pass.
Did he forget by the time we got to Castaway?
Yeah, your memory fades, doesn't it? I know.
One of my favorite stories, the movie, you showed it to the studio, your cut, and they preemptively fired you from Cocoon going, this movie's going to be a disaster. And it goes out and ends up being.
I was hired by Dick Zanuck, who I actually loved, to do Cocoon. But, you know, it's that old saying, you're only as good as your last movie. And while I was editing Romancing the Stone, things were very hysterical at the studio in those days. There was these old guys in the physical production office who really hated the movie. They hated the way we were kind of being rogues down in Mexico. We were shooting. They didn't like the way the footage was looking when it's coming back for whatever reason. And they were relentless at spreading this poison, toxic poison all over the studio. And I think they got Dick at a weak moment, and he got really nervous. And he listened to those guys, said he had to let me go. And then we previewed the movie, and then he wanted me to come back, and then I said, Dick, I don't think I can do it.
I see.
Yeah, so it was one of those. But then I did have to call Dick and Lily Zanuck. We had a long lunch, and I had to apologize for being so mean to them after they fired me. Nobody would even give it the time of day. I mean, nobody, except one guy, Steven.
You had to pull the plug on the original actor, Eric Stoltz.
I completely blame myself.
Here we go. Percent. Here we go. Percent. And action.
So then Romancing the Stone comes out. Did you have any of the projects that you were circling that you wanted to do because of the success of Romancing the Stone?
Right after Used Cars, Bob and I wrote Back to the Future.
Right.
That was the movie that I wanted to make next.
Right. Before Romancing the Stone.
Before Romancing the Stone, right. But nobody would even give it the time of day. I mean, nobody, except one guy, Steven, who read it and went, this is great.
Oh, man.
And he said, let's do this. And I said, hey, Steven, you produced my first two movies. They didn't perform. If you produce this movie and it doesn't perform, my career is over, don't you think? He said, probably right. He said, you're probably right. I said, so let me go and do a movie away from you. When Romancing the Stone came out and was a hit, now everybody wanted to make Back to the Future. So, but Bob and I looked at each other and said, well, we got to go back to the one guy who really was the only first fan.
I'm from the future.
Do you know what this means?
Did you make any changes knowing that now you would make it, or that was pretty much the script that you had?
I mean, I have to say, Back to the Future was vastly improved because they slashed the budget 4 weeks before shooting.
Wow.
You know, we went through what I call the method and the madness of the budget fight. We had this whole scene where the whole climax of the movie took place at an atomic test site in Nevada, and our heroes had a big, dish that was going to harness the atomic energy, and they were hiding out in one of those, fake houses with all the mannequins, and the studio said, we're not going to pay for any of that. And really what we had to do is we had to figure out a way to use the courthouse square because we had built it.
Right.
And so we said, we're here on the lot, we're controlled, we got this, we're spending the money to make this look like the 1950s, how do we end the movie here? That was the mission, that was what we had that's what we had to do. And so we came up with the idea of doing it on the clock tower in a lightning storm. It was just much more romantic and much better for the movie. Having this fight, which really made us angry, actually improved the story.
It seems so deliberate, like so set up and paid off.
But this is the magic of this art form. It's all chaos, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that really what it is?
Until you figure it out and wrangle it together.
Right.
You had to pull the plug on the original actor, Eric Stoltz, 5 weeks in. I mean, what did that feel like when you're having to do a gut check and go, I gotta make this call. The longer I wait, the worse it's gonna get.
I completely blame myself. And it was my ego all the way. Novice young filmmaker, I can make it work. I pushed that horrible decision all the way up until I knew I couldn't anymore. And then it's starting to get to the point where we have to strike the big set in the town square and turn it into the 80s. Had this sat down and assembled everything I had shot and sat down with Steven. And I just looked at it and said, yeah, we got to make the change. It was horrible.
And did it give you a gut check from then on, though, that you knew you could rely on a voice that said, I've got to do this no matter what?
No,
you know?
yeah, you got to.
I've been there before. I know what this feels like. This isn't right. We have to change now.
From that day on, it's like always go with your gut and never try to let your intellect, you know, just lie to you. You know, a lot of times you can't really defend your decision. It's just a feeling.
Right, right.
It's just a feeling.
When did you know that you had something that was really special?
Well, I had no idea. As a matter of fact, I was so punchy on that movie, I almost cut the whole Johnny Be Good scene out of the movie.
Wow.
Because I thought, you know, being a purist, I said, you know, we're kind of stopping the story here, aren't we?
Right, right.
We got this thing that's kind of racing down to the end, and now we're going to stop. And, you know, Michael, as great as he is going to perform Johnny Be Good. I mean, you know, and I said, you know, let's cut it out. Artie, Schmidt, my editor, said, you know what? Let's just leave it in for the preview.
Right. Wow.
He said, let's leave, Bob, just leave it in for the preview. All right. It was the greatest preview. I'll never forget it, ever. We had to pull people off the ceiling.
So after doing something like that, and it was a success,
Right.
did you have to now just up the ante on yourself now from movie to movie? But then you did Back to the Future 2, which is like Vista Glide, and I mean, really, it's much more effects heavy than the first film. You wanted them to be able to be in the same frame and see each other,
Right.
and it just wasn't possible. So you had to invent things.
Al, I'm just worried about Jennifer.
I remember just taking Ken Ralston aside, and I said, you know, we need to build a motion control dolly. I said, he goes, really? I go, yeah, because, you know, we're going to be doing these Back to the Future, and I got some ideas, and I think we're going to want to. He said, all right, well, do you think the studio will commission one? I said, I think they will for the Back to the Future sequel. That's where he sent off and designed the Vista Glide.
How long did it take to just get one shot off that had multiple people in the same thing?
I'll tell you the horror story. So that there's that scene where they're having dinner. Michael is playing 3 characters, and Leah, and she's in old lady makeup, and it's this giant motion control shot. We couldn't do it in one day.
Right.
So we literally hot glued every single thing in the set down, chained every light. That night we had an earthquake.
Oh my God.
But it took 2 days to do that one shot. Yeah, some people would say, well, that's ego, or I call it restlessness. You know, I'm just trying to say, oh, come on, let's do something that we've never seen before. I got fired off of that movie because I signed on to do Romancing the Stone. We're Disney. When we say we're making a movie, so you're either in or you're out.
Here we go. For set. Here we go. For set. And action.
So on to Roger Rabbit.
Now Roger is his name. Laughter is his game. Come on, you dope. I'm tired, bro, from watching go insane.
Now, had you done any kind of proof of concept test with a finished animation, or was this all a gamble?
To greenlight the movie, we did a 2-minute test of what the rabbit was going to do.
I'm in trouble, Eddie.
Then why'd you run?
You haven't noticed. I'm a rabbit.
Basically what we did is we would shoot the live action scene. We had these little, dolls, and I would roll the camera.
And action.
Does the condemned have anything to say?
We would block out the scene, and I would puppet this little doll in the set. As a reference. Then Ken was using the lighting, moving on this doll to see how the lighting was going to move. And then Charlie Fleischer was always right off camera, and he was doing his performance.
Please, Raoul, I can give you stars. Just drop the refrigerator on my head one more time.
Then we would shoot the scene like it's an Invisible Man, you know, where when the rabbit's bumping into stuff, we got things on wires that are moving everything around, all that physical stuff. We used, you know, the most technology that we had, the tools that we had at the day. But what was happening there at Roger Rabbit was a couple things were happening. We had Ken Ralston. He and I got along great, and I realized this guy is like a real genius. And he's the guy who actually put together the concept of how we could actually do this.
So then who would design something like a Jessica Rabbit?
Richard Williams designed Jessica Rabbit. Tell you the coolest thing about Jessica Rabbit, she's the most humanoid, even though she's very exaggerated, she's the most humanoid toon that we have. How can we, the word we kept using is, how can we make her toony? How can we make her toony? And so Richard came up with this idea that when she steps down, her breasts go up.
Sounds like a womp.
So as she's walking, her body defies gravity, which is like, so she's like kind of like opposite of real life.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
My favorite Richard Williams story was the design of Roger. He wouldn't design them. And we were in prepping, and we're going months and months in prepping, and we're designing Jessica, and we're designing the weasels, and we're designing, you know, Benny the cab, and we're designing, and I'm going, Richard, you know, Roger. And I'm starting to get really freaked out. And then one day, he took 3 felt tip markers and a piece of yellow legal pad. He goes, yeah, so I think he should be triangle shaped, because that's the international symbol of an idiot. You know, like a dunce cap. He's got to be shaped like a dunce cap. And I want to give him these big trousers. And, you know, Richard's explaining it. But then I just want to put this little tuft of orange on the top of his head. I don't know why, but I would put this, and he put this little, and he drew Roger and never changed a single thing.
Wow.
Steven's magnificent contribution to that movie, talking about a producer, he got all the Warner Brothers characters in the Disney movie. I mean, come on.
Business-wise, how does that even work?
Well, no, but Steven, you know, Steven went to the guys at Warner Brothers and said, you know, we want to put your characters in this Disney movie.
Wow.
And they said, okay. And of course, the most outrageous thing I did is, you know, I'm making Roger Rabbit at Disney, and I'm saying, I'm not using any of your animators. Wow. You know, it's like what? Yeah, no. We got to get guys who understand the type of style that we're going for. And then I said, and by the way, we want to use the 1940s Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny.
Me, what's up, Doc?
You know, we want the Tex Avery Bugs.
Yeah, ain't I a stinker?
You know who really appreciated Roger Rabbit was Stanley Kubrick.
Wow.
And he said, you know, I was watching this movie and I was looking at where the sleight of hand was and where the magic was and where all those, and I realized it was just an incredible amount of backbreaking work.
You see it.
And he said, boy, he really knew exactly what he was looking at.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You've already had such a huge success with like Back to the Future film, and then it gets topped by, you know, by another movie still. It's pretty amazing.
Life was like a box of chocolates.
I'm Jenny.
Run, Forrest, run!
You never know what you're gonna get.
Why are you so good to me?
You're my girl.
People call me Bubba.
I want to tell you I love you.
I love you too, Daddy.
Lieutenant Dan, ice cream.
Jenny! Everybody on that movie, every department, every member of the cast, everyone was inspired.
Yeah.
It was one of those movies where I would go, yeah, that costume is perfect.
It's perfect. Right, everybody's just in the zone.
You know, yep, that prop is exactly what it should be. For some reason, we had that magical thing happen where everybody was there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
When did you know that you really had something special?
That scene when Tom is talking to Jenny's grave, it was one of those days where we were in Vietnam in the morning. Do one more and just stay right on Tom, whatever he has to do. And my AD came up to me and he said, hey, you know what? The company's parked here. The oak tree's right there.
Oh, right.
Let's shoot this.
Wow.
This after lunch. He's going, hey, Tom.
You ready?
Hey, Tom, how about we do Jenny's grave after lunch, you know? And Tom, you know, great. and 4 takes. The second take is the one that's in the movie. I remember he started doing the scene.
I miss you, Jenny.
And, I started just getting really emotional.
If there's anything you need, I won't be far away.
And I said cut, and I looked behind me, and the entire crew was like dissolved in these tears.
Very nice. Let's go home.
Very nice.
Through the making of the movie, I remember very distinctly, I would go through waves of absolute terror. I would go, I think this is the worst movie I've ever made. I would actually have these like, how is this ever going to work?
Wow.
I would have that. I would be.
It's amazing.
I know. Isn't that interesting?
And the Oscar goes to Alex. Your father just won the Academy Award. Robert Zemeckis for Forrest Gump.
Best Picture, Best Director. What was it like winning an award like that? Is it the sky's the limit now, or is it like, oh geez, now what do I do?
It's the best of times, it's the worst of times, because then you now what do you do?
You hit the top, so you gotta
there's nowhere to go. I mean, but it's like, it's like not only was it an Academy Award, it was the #1 movie of the year and all that. The best reviewed movie I had made to date, and everything that, so what do? You just give up, you stop. It does become a burden, if you will. It's one of those things we do to ourselves, right? We give awards, right? Yeah. And then Spielberg hands it to me. I mean, how karmic is, like, what's up with that? All you can do is try to keep it in perspective and just kind of be grateful that you were there.
So I had a question about Spielberg. I mean, you're talking about him so far right now. He's been a big part of your collaboration. Yeah. I know he's known a little bit about your early career, that you went to USC, that you met Spielberg right away, but you had no real ties to the industry. How did you even get in?
The cool thing about USC is they had this real close relationship with the industry. They had this thing called Thursday Night at the Movies, and a filmmaker would come down with his film before it was released, and then he would do this with the moderator, talk about the film. They said, well, we're going to have this young filmmaker. His name is Steven Spielberg. He's coming on Thursday night. He's bringing us a new movie called Sugarland Express. So it's this like magnificent, giant, widescreen movie. Vilmos Zsigmondt is the, cinematographer, and then this kid walks in. He's like, he had to be 20-something,
yeah, he's
right?
Like in his 20s, early 20s.
Yeah, and I went, man, this guy's my hero. And we stayed in touch. And then he went off and made Jaws and became like this, he became Steven Spielberg.
I'd read somewhere that you said no one ever gave you notes like Steven. He was able to give you the best notes as a collaborator.
Being a director and having Steven Spielberg be your producer is a dream, because you don't have any insane conversations, right?
Right.
Because he knows what a director does. So everything is kind of on a level of mutual understanding. He won't say things that are literally insane. When he comes up with ideas as a producer, that they can go, yeah, okay, there's a way I can make that work. But then he's also cool too, and says, I say, Steven, I don't get that, and he'll go, all right, well, it's an idea. I just could do anything I wanted.
That's still my favorite plane crash sequence. That thing is unbelievable.
Here we go. For set. Here we go. For set. And action.
So Contact. Tell me about this movie. That's one of my favorite movies. I really love that movie.
The White House has just released a statement confirming that a message of unknown origin emanating from deep space has been received by American scientists.
It might turn out to be some kind of a transport.
Want to take a ride?
They're alive.
I had fun making that movie because I had a lot of toys to do that movie, but it was a story that I really wanted to somehow process. Questioning these ideas. I was at that point in my life where I was kind of thinking about what's it all mean, kind of a thing, And it was talking to me very, very, very clearly. And I just so love Carl Sagan, And Jodie, she got that movie completely. I mean, she really wanted to be, she understood that character so clearly. And that was the one movie in my career that I just could do anything I wanted. I was at the pinnacle of my power.
Whatever you want, Bob.
Yeah, every single piece of equipment that existed was on the truck. You know, it was one of those. I mean, there's a scene where we're in the big telescope in Puerto Rico. What's cool is underneath this telescope is this gravel road. It kind of does this big curve. And I wanted to do this shot where Jodie is driving this Jeep and she almost runs the car into Tom Skerritt and then jumps out and gets right in his face.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I want to do that all in one shot.
True? I'll let you pull the plug.
I know you can't see it now, but I'm doing you a favor.
And everyone's going, well, you can't have an actress drive a car on a gravel road and stop right in front of all your cast, put the car in park, jump out, and then do a scene. We just can't do that. And I wanted to do this shot, and this is the kind of thing that, you know, it's really indulgent. Right?
You were smiling as you were trying to say that phrase.
Well, I thought, it was really indulgent. I mean, there's no other way to describe it.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? So we build this incredible, elaborate, you know, blind drive car with a stuntman, and then the front of the Jeep is offset, and Jodie, it's all fake, and the cameraman's behind her, and this whole thing with this elaborate, like, giant, you know, dune buggy car with, you know, just to do one shot.
Right.
You know, that's the kind of thing.
That's
the kind of fun stuff I was able to do in that movie.
Okay, Cast Away.
I'll be right back.
That's like still my favorite plane crash sequence. That thing is unbelievable. And you're a pilot too, so what, are these your nightmares in these movies?
No, you know, I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe I'm trying to ward something off. I mean, I think that's what makes them real.
Yeah, it's so real and so detailed, but yet the spectacles are the way you construct the shots, and you feel it as if it's happening, but you know, wow, this is complete craftsmanship. When I think of craftsmanship in film, I think of you, because your moves are so well crafted, so tightly put together. That was a long process for that movie, because you stopped for a year.
Tom really wanted to do this movie because he just loves that kind of stuff. You know, it's like, you know, what would it really be like? You know, what would it really be like if you were, no, I mean, really. Where no pirates are going to show up and no girl's going to float up in a boat, right? You know, what would it really be like? I said, what about we shoot the first half of the movie and then we shut down for a year and you know, lose 60 pounds. He said, can we do that? I said, well, let's find out. And so then we went and we presented it to the studio and we came up with the idea, but here's the idea, we'll do another movie.
She said, What Lies Beneath? Was that
What Lies
studio's
Beneath.
movie? Or was that a project?
Well, no, what happened was that Cast Away was developed by Fox, and What Lies Beneath was developed by DreamWorks. So we made both of them co-productions.
Oh, I see. That's cool.
And they both could then have two movies for the price of one. Right.
And I remember all these really cool Hitchcock stuff towards the end. Stuff that Hitchcock wished he could have done, and he had special effects. And Bob knew.
Well, that's what I say.
He would have used that if he had it.
Exactly. I've said this in interviews. I said, you know, when people bitch about digital cinema, I said, listen, if Hitchcock were alive, he'd be shooting everything digital.
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding?
My painter friend, he says that. He uses acrylic painting. He said, he says, like, hey, if Michelangelo had a forklift, he would have been using that instead of freaking scaffolding. You think he wouldn't be using the latest technology to
he wouldn't have been
crippled?
Done? I know.
He wouldn't have been doing that. You won't forget
That's true.
that. You would have used a chainsaw if there was a chainsaw.
That's true.
You made the very first motion capture film, The Polar Express.
All aboard!
It's a magic train.
Around 2003, I think, is probably when you were making Polar Express. That's when I was doing Sin City. It was one of those things where you look at the material and you go, wow, the book is so well drawn. It's not just the story, it's not just the dialogue, it's the visual storytelling going on. To make that book, we have to do a whole new technique. You do the same with Polar Express. You saw that book and you went, well, yeah, it's a great story, but half of it is also the visual storytelling that goes with it. We can't just shoot this like a regular animated film. So I like that you created a whole new way.
When I started doing the digital movies, I just loved the idea that I could do the cinema part without any restriction. I never had to worry about where I would put my camera. I could do any kind of shot I wanted. You do the scene and you don't have to say cut until the scene is over.
Right.
And then the other cool thing is that actor A is really great in take 3, and actor B is really great in take 5. I can cobble them together, tile them together, and now I got the best of all worlds.
Right.
The thing that's great about the digital cinema, it's liberating the art from the technology. Yeah. That's the thing that's so great about it. So you just get to do performance. An actor only wants to know one thing from a director.
Here we go. For sec. Here we go. For sec. And action.
Okay, flight.
Atlanta Center, this is Southjet 227. We're in an uncontrolled dive.
Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt now.
We're gonna roll it.
Oh, Lord Jesus!
I knew that the scene where we turned the plane upside down was going to be a big deal, and we didn't have a lot of money to make that movie. So I prevised that whole thing using my rig here, which is InterSense, because I put my own camera in, which is the only way to do it. And I'll rough in a handheld shot and say, give me something like that. I mean, the hardest thing for me in previs is talking the camera through. Kid falls, boom, that's good. Now the plane goes back around and keep going. Stop, cube, 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 keep going. All these previous guys who come out of gaming, and it's like, I'm sorry, what's this camera connected to? What do you mean connected to? I mean, why is this camera going like this? Why is this camera going like that all the time? You know, why is it kind of doing this kind of thing? Well, I don't know.
An audience recognizes that that's not physically possible. It's
yeah, right. I mean, shouldn't it be connected to the side of the car?
Right, right.
But you know, what's interesting on flight, it kind of freaked out the effects guys because it was like, holy shit, you know, how are we gonna do? They kind of freaked out, but something happened that never happened before. The grip department went, wow, we know exactly what to do. They said, we know how to rig these cameras. We know what we're gonna do. And they were like all jazzed. It was like something I said, that's really cool. One department freaked and another department was kind of like, got it. You know, it was kind of interesting.
So you took a sabbatical from normal filmmaking for 10 years to make the motion capture. Did you find anything different in the filmmaking world when you came back, or was you surprised how very little had changed?
No, it was both. A lot was exactly the same, but you know, I was into the digital realm now. I was shooting with digital cameras and all these new digital rigs. It was so fantastic using these small digital cameras. That was the great joy for me.
Didn't feel like you were going back. You were actually still
never felt like I was going back. And everything that you do, you're always using. You know, so a lot of stuff that we did was sort of groundbreaking in the performance capture I'm using now in what you would loosely call live action, but who knows what it all is now.
Now, do you consider yourself a director first and a writer second, or was writing a means to an end to be able to direct something?
I consider myself a filmmaker. Even though I don't physically write, I'm always writing. Whether you're writing the screenplay to create the images, or you're editing with the images, you're writing with images, or the cast is interpreting the writing and they're writing, and you're directing them and that's writing. Let's try it with the camera one. So storytelling, whatever form it takes, is I call myself basically a filmmaker storyteller. But yeah, so I'm always writing.
So you're freeing up of the camera and just being liberated from the traditional way of camera. Where did that?
I just think that there's great power in letting the camera just kind of like witness everything, you know, and just kind of let the camera become this invisible thing that's kind of just floating around and watching what's going on.
I can tell it's through your eyes because it feels, your films have a continuity to them.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I always approach the camera from the story. How can the camera tell the beats of the story, you know, and give the audience the information that they need when they need to know it, you know, and how can the camera help to do this?
How did you attach the camera at the beginning of Castaway to the FedEx box? Because today it would just be a GoPro.
It was a rod attached to the camera, and then there was an electromagnet at the end of the rod and a metal plate in the FedEx box. you know, the camera operator was actually moving the FedEx box and the actor was pantomiming, carrying the box alongside the camera until the moment when they were going to separate, and then we shut off the magnet and the actor took it and the camera just...
But back then it was really striking and like, oh my God, I've never seen this angle before.
Right.
Again, another way where you free the camera up and you show us an angle, again, for an important feature. You wanted to see that box. How much of it is your framing? How much involved are you in the camera work and the framing and the actual, you know, shot to shot, scene to scene?
I'm putting my fingers on every shot. Yeah, I mean, it's like I have to bless everything.
Cut. Good.
What's your method working with actors? What's your process?
Well, my mechanical process is I love to, what I call rehearse, but it isn't really rehearsal. What I basically do is I just have a really long, elaborate table reading with my key cast. And I basically act the movie out. And then they start chiming in and we basically just we just take the screenplay and every character and put each one into deep therapy, right? And that's sort of my rehearsal process. And I always say to my cast, I always say in rehearsal, I say, if you ask me a question and I don't have an answer, the problem's in the screenplay.
Right.
You know, because if you come to me and say, what color should this shirt be? And I go, gee, you know, I really don't know. Then what that means is that there's something that we don't understand about this character.
Now, you know what's good, Tom, is if you...
I think that an actor only wants to know one thing from a director, and that is, what is the character feeling?
There, that's good. That's great.
What's the character feeling in that moment, in that scene? Well, he's really sad. No, oh, wait, hold, cut, not that sad.
But tell me, Eddie, is that a rabbit in your pocket or you're just happy to see me?
You just have your hand on his throttle. My favorite quote is a Truffaut quote. The definition of a great movie is the perfect blend of truth and spectacle. And spectacle is why you go to the movies. Films have always been the marriage between art and science. It's a technical art form. All the technology that we use to create a modern movie, to me, is all equal. Now, I don't give any more weight to a visual effect or a close-up, which is a visual effect. It's to serve the story.
Brace for impact.
An artist should be an anarchist, maybe a benevolent anarchist.
You gotta do it again.
I think an artist should be a gambler, a risk taker, incredibly vulnerable. The vulgar way that I put that is, you gotta put your dick on the windowsill.
Movie directing is exhilarating, exhausting.
More power, Tom.
Addicting, painful, rewarding, and a very cool job. Thank you all very much.
The cinema of Bob Zemeckis has blown away audiences and other filmmakers alike for decades. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it.
On the El Rey Network.
Well, thank you.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you. Alrighty.